San Martino, and the list goes on and on. Stan Stasiak, Pedro Morales, and right off to the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan will lose to somebody else. Whether you're a golfer, a baseball player, a football player, a politician, there's just always somebody to take your place. Rock and roll with Bo Diddley, and oh, the list goes on and on and on. Rock Around the Clock, Bill Hetty and the Comets, American Bandstand. It's just amazing. Sports with Mickey Mantle and Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth and Don Mattingly's haircut. That's just how things happen in life. Goddamn truth. Talk about a guy getting signed for $25 million from where I'm from in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Danny Marino. Got an IQ of a flying ant, the guy signed an ant. $25 million to play throw football for 5 years. Strange world out there. But I think the common denominator, same thing, man. They all want to go make the best of themselves. They have a common focus out there. They're dedicated. They gave their life. And I'll tell you what, it's just a pleasure being with guys like Buddy Rogers, Lou Thesz, Billy Graham, Mr. Sharp too. Just nice being with y'all. Of course, Bruno will join people here. He's from my hometown, Pittsburgh, PA. He was kind of an out of mind too those days. And in summation, Mr. Cornette too, and Ric Flair, I really don't want to really forget anybody. But it's a combined effort to what you really see on TV and hotels or airports or whatever, in arenas. It's our pleasure to always show up and give you what you want.
You got my books. There's only a few things that I'd like to say, and number one is the first thing that I have to agree with Johnny Valiant. I consider myself very fortunate. The town that I came from, Paulsboro, New Jersey, at one town, was the hub of professional wrestling. That was where Vince McMahon Sr.'s top men lived to make it to their towns in the most convenient fashion. Unlike most kids who go to football games, baseball games, hockey games, basketball games, the very first sporting event my father took me to was professional wrestling. It was in Canby Convention Hall. I really had only seen it on television and I wasn't sure what I was going to. But when I see Nature Boy Buddy Rogers walk to the ring to wrestle Argentina Rocca, I turned around to my father and I said, that's what I want to be when I get big. Unfortunately, for me, I wasn't that good. But it was enough inspiration for me to begin in the business. And it led me into a business that for 17 years, I was able to fulfill my goals. On the way home that night, we stopped at a restaurant in our hometown, and Wild Red Berry was there. That could be a foreign name to a lot of people. But that man told me, I went up to him, I said, Dad, can I go talk to him? He goes, yes. I said, what do I have to do in order to be a professional wrestler? He said, son, you need 10 years of amateur experience. Now, I don't know whether that was to blow me off for 10 years or whether it was a legitimate reason. But I took his advice and it worked well for me. It not only paid my way through college, but it did get me in the business of professional wrestling. And to think that from the time that I'm in 7th grade until I'm now 41 years old and retired from the business, to see the day that I could sit with Buddy Rogers, Lou Thesz, superstar Billy Graham.
Well, not me. Well, you can say that again.
I even saw Jim Cornette when I was a kid.
Thank you, Larry.
No, not really. But the point that I'm trying to make is that what I want everyone to keep in mind, and Buddy and I started a professional wrestling school together called Champions Choice, which we changed to Buddy Rogers School of Professional Wrestling, which later got changed to the Monster Factory, is that the sign on the marquee says professional wrestling. And Dennis Carluzzo, my partner, when we're done at the end of the night, what we do is we ask people on the way out the door one thing. Did you get your money's worth? Because that's what's important to us. It's not the violence. What we want people to see is professional wrestling, and we want a man to walk out of there with his little girl and his little boy and his wife, and everyone to say, we had a hell of a time, and it didn't cost as much as it did to go to the carnival or go to the circus, and we had a good time. And I think that if wrestling would get away, the WWF, I don't want to knock them. Vince McMahon has done wonders for professional wrestling, because what it's done is he's made it so much bigger than life that it's opened doors for small promoters like ourselves to get young talent and start farm teams. Just like baseball is so popular, there's a AAA, a AA, a single A. Football, you know, there's the semi-pro leagues, and that's exactly what independents are to professional wrestling. And we try to be a leader in wrestling, and what we want to stick to is wrestling. So when you go to a professional wrestling match, not only do we hope that you get our money's worth, but we hope that someday in our hearts that you will see a future Lou Thesz, Buddy Rogers, superstar Billy Graham, Ric Flair, or someone that has actual wrestling ability, regardless if they have 23-inch arms, a 22-inch waist, and an 80-inch chest. If they've got a pot belly and they can go out there and entertain your family and make you feel good inside, like when you leave a Disney movie, then we've created what we wanted to create, and that's to send the wrestling fan home happy.
I want to pose a question to Billy Graham, Buddy Rogers, Lou Thesz, Johnny V, Larry. The business has changed so much in the decade of the 1980s heading into 1990s, and that's partially, or could be a major part, due to newsletters like the Wrestling Observer and Dave Meltzer and others who have tried to follow in his footsteps. I know that the radio show that I do, we try to also provide the fans information that it's hard to get. It's an outlet for fans who really enjoy professional wrestling and want to know everything about it. In the old days, I hate to use that expression, but there was not a radio show like the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. There was not a Wrestling Observer newsletter. What do you feel about the newsletters that are out today that talk about inside aspects of the business, radio talk shows like mine, and talk to you about what's going on in professional wrestling, analyze it, and criticize it at times? It wasn't like this a long time ago. Billy, I'd like to start with you if possible.
Well, thank you, John. I'll just, the first thing I'd like to say is thank you for inviting me to your program. It's really been a pleasure to meet all these fans and to be part of your program. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to be here. That's the first thing I'd like to do is thank you personally. And it's the thing with the letters and the changes, these people are, you know, that's the consequences of being in the business of wrestling, you know. I mean, that's to me, that's the way the chips have fallen. Because years ago, I remember it was very, very tight and very close. Like when I was champion in '77, for instance, just going back that far, like 14 years, it was so different. But all of a sudden, it's opened up, and hey, that's the way the chips fall. I mean, you know, whether you like it or not, that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be for a long time, because the people are journalists, Dave and Meltzer and the other gentlemen that are involved in this, like yourself, the radio shows. I mean, you people are journalists, and you're investigating, and hey, that's just, you know, that's just the way it goes. I tell you, it's brought a lot of insight. I know a lot of people really despise it. You know, I mean, they hate it. You know, but myself personally, you know, I just think, well, that's just another change that has happened to wrestling, you know, and that's just the way it goes. And if you don't like it, you can't put, you don't have to put up with it. Just don't read it or don't listen to it, or don't watch it. But it's definitely has a major effect. It's affecting Vince McMahon. The big cheese in this whole ball game is affecting that person himself. John Arizzi, this man Dave Meltzer here, and their colleagues are affecting Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation and the WCW. So take it or leave it. It's here to stay. It's really just about the best I can do, you know.
Buddy or Lou, would you like to comment on that as well?
Well, many years ago, prior to the sophisticated newsletter that Dave has, each territory or each major city would print their own program, whether it was weekly or monthly, whenever they had a major show coming up. And they had sort of an amateurish newsletter, but it was focused, of course, on their own little territory, their own little ball game. But with the broad scope that Dave is covering with his newsletter, it's really been a boon to wrestling because he's been able to get the information from throughout the world. We get all the information from everywhere, and we keep a pretty good pulse on wrestling. And I'm involved in the wrestling game. I have been for a number of years, but if it weren't for Dave's newsletter to keep me up with it, I would lose a lot of the information that he has in there. Local productions, local programs and letters couldn't get the job done. And I think I'll be very thankful to have something like that newsletter.
Anyone else like to comment on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say something. Seriously, no, okay, aside, a lot of people, I can sit here. A lot of people, seriously, and I'll say this, doesn't do to anybody else. I've heard this man get a lot of heat about his newsletter. And I've never been one to back down and hide the shadow when Dave Meltzer's name is mentioned. Because the guy's been very helpful to me. I consider him a very good friend of mine, one of my best friends. His newsletter gives a lot of information which are helpful to promoters. He lets you know who's available, who's leaving who's going there. And if you have a question about the business, he's more than willing to answer it for you. And I respect his knowledge and accept his knowledge. He's a good guy, and Dave, I think he was great.
Jim?
Well, I'm gonna stand up. Let me say, I think, and to be honest with you, it would be better if the business was not exposed like it is today. I think more people would still be coming to the matches. Because we've got to realize, and I'm including myself among this, that most people don't get into wrestling the art form that we see that it is. They just want to know, is it real or is it fake or whatever? Shit, we don't care. That's the majority of people across the country. If people still believe, they would still be coming back to the arenas time after time after time until they saw the guy win that they wanted to see win. However, that ain't going to happen anymore. But a lot of people sit there and blame Dave Meltzer and blame newsletters. He is sending this thing out to maybe 5,000 people across the country, maybe not that many, that are going to go to the matches anyway because they're interested. Jim Herd and Vince McMahon and all these other dumb shits put it in the front page of the New York Times and it gets dropped down in 100 million daggum doorsteps of people that don't give a shit. I always knew it was. I ain't ever going to go see that shit. So instead of blaming Dave and blaming a few people who are going to send out stuff to all you guys who are obviously going to come anyway, we should blame the stupid people running TBS and Vince McMahon, to me, in my opinion, made a stupid mistake putting it all over the newspapers because they brought the message that this was all a show, as he termed it, to people who really didn't give a shit about wrestling in the first place, and that's just going to cement the fact they're never going to go. So if we're going to blame somebody, let's blame the people that did it the worst and exposed it the most, and that's the daggum guys running the thing in the first place.
Yo, Jimmy, one other thing. I know Vince McMahon and Jim Herd and Vern Gaino. Every Monday, that's the first thing they read, the Observer, and they've helped screw up their own promotions by saying, this Meltzer's a bunch of shit. Let's do opposite of what he says he's going to do and screw up, and he wound up screwing everything up. But like Jimmy said, there's only 5,000 people read the thing. But they put a lot of blame on him for exposing the business and wrecking it, and he goes in the front of this.
They put the blame on him because he exposes the way that they screw things up.
You get a guy going in front of the state senate in New Jersey sends his wife off to tell everybody pro wrestling is fixed, it's entertainment, you know, and they rag on him